Almighty God, we thank you for the blessing and the privilege to study your word, to be a part of this movement. We thank you for your guidance and your direction. We thank you for your patience with us. And we pray, Lord, that as we come and continue our Sabbath studies together, that your presence would be with us, to help us, to guide us, to direct us, and renew each day, Lord, a desire and a hunger and a thirst. That your word, Lord, and this message would forever change us. For we want to walk in righteousness and give glory to you, and enter in and go through this crisis, Lord, faithful and obedient, and being the beacons of light of your character, Lord, in the darkness of this world, that we might shine bright upon those that are in our sphere of influence. May together, each of us, work together to work through these stories with your help, helping us to understand the original history and where, Lord, in different places in history, there have been fulfillments that prophets spoke for their time. So we need to understand their history before we can look at our own and understand it. So please help us, Lord. There are many challenges that we face. Many are suffering, whether it be health challenges, physical health challenges, or mental health challenges. But we pray as we come together on your day that we would have the refreshing we need to strengthen us. So bless us as we continue to review the second angel in this particular study, Lord. And especially as we look at Revelation 17 as well. We thank you and we praise you, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So mostly, for anybody that wasn't here last night, mostly what we're going to do is review what we did go through last night, just because there were some points that were hard to get, and we want to make sure that everybody understood. And I'll give you the reference of what we're looking at. They were the France School of the Prophets 2018. This particular one, I don't have the date written down, but it was July 2018, and it's Elder Parminder, and the title is The Second Angel. I think it was number 6 on the list, number 6. And they can be found, where I pulled them from was that the Prophetic Herald, but I'm sure they're on the Daniel and Revelation, Midnight Cry, and likely then as well on Eden to Eden, because I believe that's France. That's where we're at. So they would be on the Eden site. So the second angel, France School of the Prophets, July 2018. And so we'll basically just walk through and we do want participation of anybody that is willing to participate with us in this. I want to pull up the couple of quotes that we started with last night, if you give me just a second. And we'll start with that as our reference point. Okay. So there are studies that in looking at this last night after we finished, I started out in their, on the Prophetic Herald. I don't know if they're divided for a reason, but there's two different playlists. And one of them, and maybe Christine will post them in the chat again, but one of them, had July in the title of the playlist. They were all France School of the Prophets, but one of them had July and one of them had September. But one of them has, I think, like 46 presentations, and one I think was 48 presentations. I started out in the one that had 48 presentations, but then through some of what was being taught there, I wanted to go back, and I realized these two. At the time, I didn't see the one with 46. So if somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, anybody that was there. But it was all one camp meeting. I think we confirmed that last night. It was all one camp meeting. So initially I saw the latter portion. So I backed up after trying to get ready with a couple of studies from the portion that was in September, and backed up. So what we're looking at is, from what I was looking at last night after we finished, is going through this study of trying to locate where we are in early writings in 1882. Her writing, in the early writings written in 1882, put together in 1882, and where we are. So he was tracing where we are. So what the particular portion we're looking at is the second angel. And that's the title of the study, the second angel. So first, to note out what we looked at last night was, we're looking at these chapters here. I'm pretty sure you can see the screenshot here. I want to close the screenshot. Hang on one second and restart that to get rid of the black boxes, because so I can keep the chat open. Okay. Okay, then I can have chat in case anybody has any questions or comments, and feel free to speak up too. Okay, so what he was bringing out was looking at these particular 5 chapters in Millerite history, and tracing down where we're at. And we're going to come to a particular question that those that were here last night will likely already have the answer. And but if and likely maybe some of us forgot. I know I forget really easy myself. But these 5 chapters, we're not looking at all 5 chapters. We're just looking at where these 5 chapters are located. And the chapter on William Miller, the chapter on the first angel's message, the chapter on the second angel's message, the Advent Movement illustrated, and then another illustration. And that's as far as we're looking at currently. And I'm sure some of the other studies go further with that. But that's where we're looking as far as where we're at. So the first thing that we went through last night was just a couple of passages here in the Advent Movement Illustrated. The Advent Movement Illustrated is just repeating the first 3 chapters. So you have William Miller, the first angel's message, second angel's message. Now the Advent Movement Illustrated is going to be a repeating of those 3 chapters, as well as self-explanatory, another illustration. So if you look at, like, for instance, and I think I brought this up last night with the Gospels. The Gospels were the same story being written by 4 different people, 4 different perspectives. This is Ellen White's writings, but the idea is that you're going to look at things in multiple ways. And as we in remembering the cube that Elder Parmenter drew up when it came to parables, it's looking at things in multiple ways. Looking at things using compare and contrast, using alpha and omega, using oh, I'm totally drawing a blank. Somebody help me out. Juxtaposition. And so taking and repeating and large, taking and looking at things from different perspectives. So so the Advent Movement Illustrated is a repeating of those first 3 chapters. So we'll just take a couple of passages out of here and then go further from here. So I saw a number of companies that seemed to be bound together by cords. Many of these companies were in total darkness. Their eyes were directed downward to the earth, and there seemed to be no connection between them and Jesus. So anybody that maybe wasn't here last night, if they want to answer in the chat or open your mic, why is there no connection between them and Jesus? Anybody? According to the passage, why would there be no connection between them and Jesus?
Your last night, but I can answer. They were in total darkness and their eyes were directed downward, not.
Yeah, they're looking downward. They're in darkness. And I'm gonna share something at the end of this if I remember it. I added it to the notes because I actually had like 15 minutes of the notes. There were some other things he discussed. So I'm gonna bring that comment of darkness up at the end. So their eyes are directed downward to earth, and there seemed to be no connection between them and Jesus. So we know that we need to be looking up to Jesus. But scattered through these different companies were persons whose countenances looked light and whose eyes were raised to heaven. So you've got those that have a light countenance that are looking up to heaven. And beams of light from Jesus, like rays from the sun, were imparted to them. So they're looking up to Jesus, they're looking up to heaven, and beams of light are imparted to them. An angel bade me look carefully, and I saw an angel watching over every one of those who had a ray of light, while evil angels surrounded those who were in darkness. I heard a voice of an angel cry, "Fear God, give glory to God, for the hour of God's judgment is come." So where do we know that passage from? Fear God. Where do we know that from? Say that again.
Revelation 14.
Revelation 14. And what does it represent? First angel's message. Thank you. So it represents the first angel's message. A glorious light rested down upon these companies to enlighten all who would receive it. Some of those who were in darkness received the light and rejoiced. Others resisted the light from heaven, saying it was sent to lead them astray. The light passed away from them, and they were left in darkness. Those who had received the light from Jesus joyfully cherished the increase of precious light which was shed upon them. Their faces beamed with holy joy, while their gaze was directed upward to Jesus with intense interest. And their voices were heard in harmony with the voice of the angel. Fear God, give glory to God, for the hour of God's judgment has come. So we're going to stop there and go on to another illustration. And read a little bit from here and then have a couple of questions. I was shown the interest. We saw the interest, intense interest in the previous passage. I was shown the interest which all heaven had taken in the work going upon the earth. Jesus commissioned a mighty angel to descend and warn the inhabitants of the earth to prepare for his second appearing. As the angel left the presence of Jesus in heaven, an exceedingly bright and glorious light went before him. I was told that who's the his? Who is the his?
The angel's mission.
Right. The angel's mission was to lighten the earth with his glory and warn man of the coming wrath of God. Multitudes received the light. Some of these seemed to be very solemn, while others were joyful and enraptured. All who received the light turned their faces toward heaven and glorified God. Though it was shed upon all, some merely came under its influence, but did not heartily receive it. So which angel, first for those that were not with us last night, and if no one answers, then we'll open it up to those that were with us last night. So which angel is this? I was shown with interest. Let's see. Jesus commissioned a mighty angel to descend and warn the inhabitants. Which angel is this?
First angel?
Is that Robert?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a second angel and we have a first angel.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Were you with us last night, Robert? Are you cheating?
No, I wasn't here last night.
Good. Anybody else? So Robert, why do you say the first angel?
Well, it's the first angel that fear God and he gives judgment, right?
Right. You see judgment in here?
No.
Let's see here.
Where are we?
I was told that his mission was to lighten the earth with his glory and warn man of the coming wrath of God.
Yeah. No judgment is coming.
So judgment is coming. So there's going to be a warning, right?
Yes.
And then a warning that judgment is coming. Judgment is come. So that the coming wrath, there's a warning of it. So we see that then as the first angel. So what we're going to walk through, because I know Susie's put second angel, and there may be others that might be thinking second angel. If anybody wants to speak, why would we say second angel? Anybody want to, or Susie, you can type it in the chat if you want, or you can, if you're able to speak, either way. Why would you say second angel?
Because this is another illustration. This is another repeat of the history. So the first mighty angel was the first angel. The second mighty angel is the second angel.
Anybody else? Okay, so we have one saying first angel, and it sounds like we have two saying this is the second angel. Is that correct? Do I have that correct? Two at least that have spoken. Or wrote in the chat. Saying second angel. So we'll go back and read just a little bit again. I was shown the interest which all heaven had taken in the work going on upon the earth. Jesus commissioned a mighty angel to descend and warn the inhabitants of the earth to prepare for his second appearing. And skipping a little bit, I was told that his mission was to lighten the earth with his glory and warn man of the coming wrath of God. All who received the light turned their faces toward heaven and glorified God. So we have some saying Revelation 8, some saying it's the second angel. And if you were those that are saying the second angel, are you saying Revelation 18? Is that what you're saying?
No, Revelation 14. Is it 9 or 7?
Second angel, verse 8, right? Isn't it verse 8? What's verse 8 say?
Yeah, verse 8.
What does verse 8 say? If you have it, you want to read it.
Want me to read it?
Yeah, do you have it?
14:8.
Yes.
And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication.
So is this angel that says fear God, is this angel telling the people that Babylon has fallen?
the first angel has all three messages. And in this particular paragraph here, it says, with his glory to warn humanity of the wrath of God. So, and there is no Babylon is fallen. So it is the first angel's message.
Okay, so are we in agreement? It's not Millerite history? Whereas Revelation 18? I think somebody said 14, right? Revelation. Revelation.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I was going to ask you to rephrase that question because I wanted to be sure I understood it. You said, can we say we're in agreement? What now? That we're in agreement on what?
Where is Revelation 18? Is Revelation 18 in the Millerite history? And a couple of people have said Revelation 14 is Millerite history. Are there any that say that Revelation 18 is in Millerite history? And Christina is saying that this is, if I'm understanding Christina, that that what we're reading is Revelation 18. Is that correct, Christina? You can type it in the chat, yes or no. Is it correct? Is that what you're referring to? The Revelation 18, this chapter is talking, yes, talks about the bright light. Okay. So verse 1 of Revelation 18, where the earth was lightened with his glory, and it's exactly the same phrase for this angel when you go into where was I thinking?
Rev 18.
Yeah, I'm looking at 14. Give me a second.
Oh,
So I get my own notes straight, right? Okay, I have a wrong passage in the Bible anyways. Okay, so we're going to go back to looking at Revelation 18. Is Revelation 18 in the Millerite history? And there are some that are saying yes and some that are saying no. What about what angel? Do we still are divided, that some say the first angel and some say the second angel? Is that correct? Or there are
Susie also put in what I had thought last night, but I don't want to give away the answer. But so she also thought it was Revelation 10 angel, and others also are thinking it's Revelation 18 angel.
Okay, Christina did say Revelation 18 is our history. And going back to Susie, this one I missed. 10, I think you mean Revelation 10, chapter 10, right? Speaks of a mighty angel. Is that correct? Revelation 10?
I believe that's what she meant.
Okay.
Because I thought the same as her last night when I
Okay.
first heard.
Okay. And what we were kind of looking at last night is the confusion that we have. And this presentation was in 2018, which says in 2023, we still have the same confusion over who the angels are and walking through this history. So hopefully, go ahead.
Elaine, how do we understand Revelation 10, the mighty angel there? What was it? Was it in August 11, 1840 there? Coming down?
I don't want to go to 10 yet.
Okay.
But there's a couple of things that I have that maybe will be laced into here as we go through this that might include 10. And I think a lot of it involves knowing a better understanding the angels and their work. If that made sense. So I don't want to go into 10 just yet. Hopefully as we go through this. Okay. So with those that say that it is Revelation 18, because it is saying another angel, the passage we're reading says another angel. Let's see, the angel in the presence of Jesus, where's, as the angel left the presence, let me go back and find which verse I want, because I have it in my notes as well. I was told that his mission, let's see, shown the interest which all heaven had taken in the work upon earth. Jesus commissioned a mighty angel. So this one's saying a mighty angel to descend and warn the inhabitants of the earth. So there's a mighty angel that's sent to earth. And we saw in the previous chapter, and I'll back up there. Hopefully I don't make you all dizzy, but a quick journey. We saw in this previous chapter, and remember what we're looking at is that these 5 chapters here in early writings, that the first 3 here, you're talking about Millerite history, and then you have the Advent movement illustrated, which is just repeating this, and then another illustration, which is still just repeating again this. So we're looking at William Miller, the first angel's message and the second angel's message being repeated in these next 2 chapters. So let's see, let me find the right verse I want. I saw a number of companies that seemed to be bound together by cords. Many in these companies were in total darkness. Their eyes were directed downward to the earth. And we're going to go skip down to the bottom. An angel bade me look carefully, and I saw an angel watching over every one of those that had a ray of light, while evil angels surrounded those who were in darkness. I heard a voice of an angel cry, "Fear God, give glory to God, for the hour of God's judgment is come." And we already identified that as the first angel's message, correct? Everybody's in agreement there that we identify this as the first angel.
Yes.
Okay, so we see a cry come out of the first angel that says, we know it to be the first angel that says, "Fear God, give glory to God," right? And judgment, we're looking at that word in the next chapter. We'll come across that. So we're seeing this as being a mighty angel that comes down, and we're going to go back down to another illustration. Where we see Jesus commissioned a mighty angel to descend and warn the inhabitants. So remember that we're looking at these first 3 chapters, and the Advent movement illustrated and another illustration are just a repeating of these chapters. Okay, so we're going to read a couple of verses down after we read this one again. Jesus commissioned a mighty angel to descend and warn the inhabitants of the earth to prepare for his second appearing. And then I was told that his mission, we determined that already. I don't know if everybody was in agreement. We determined that to be to be this angel that comes down. The angel's mission. I was told that the angel's mission, the one that comes down, as the angel left the presence of Jesus. So let's see, Jesus commissioned a mighty angel to descend and warn. So this angel that Jesus commissioned is sent down, and this angel's mission was to lighten the earth with his glory and warn man of the coming wrath of God. So we all see that, right? So this angel that comes down, it is a mighty angel as well, and it comes down to lighten the earth with its glory and warn humanity of the coming wrath of God. Okay. So let me make sure I don't miss anything. So if we're reading a repeat, we're reading another illustration, it's a repeat of the Advent movement. What did we see the angel was in the Advent movement? What message is given in the Advent movement? The Advent movement illustrated. What message was given? What number? Angel. First. Okay. So if we're reading another illustration, what should we expect to see in another illustration? What does another illustration mean? You have the Advent movement illustrated. and then another illustration. What does it mean when it says another illustration? What is it illustrating? Parallel, same thing, right? Parallel
It's
passage.
going to repeat.
It's
Can
going
you
to
say
repeat.
that? Yeah.
Okay, so if it's going to repeat, and that first mighty angel that came and said, fear God. So if we're looking at another illustration, is this the second angel or the first angel? Jesus commissioned a mighty angel to descend and warn the inhabitants. I think Susie's on. I think you mean must. It must be number one. Is that right? And we'll read a little bit further. Yes, okay. Is there anybody that doesn't see that? That does not see that, and we need to go through it again? It's hard to judge silence, by the way. But I am watching the chat. So we're in agreement that this mighty angel that descends is the first angel. You got a couple of agrees, couple of yeses. Okay, so we'll read a little bit further. As the angel left the presence of Jesus in heaven, an exceeding bright and glorious light went before him. I was told that his mission was to lighten the earth with his glory and warn man of the coming wrath of God. Multitudes received the light. Some of these seemed to be very solemn, while others were joyful and enraptured. All who received the light turned their faces toward heaven and glorified God. Though it was shed upon all, some merely came under its influence, but did not heartily receive it. Many were filled with great wrath. Ministers and people united with the vial and stoutly resisted the light shed by the mighty angel. But all who received it withdrew from the world and were closely united one with one another. And I think we skipped a couple of passages where it talked about darkness in the previous chapter, so we'll go through here, and if we have to, we'll back up. Satan and his angels were busily engaged in seeking to attract the minds of as many as possible from the light. The company who rejected it were left in darkness. They were left in darkness. Where did they start?
Darkness.
Right? They started in darkness and they stayed in darkness. They rejected the light and they stayed in darkness. I saw the angel of God watching with the deepest interest his professed people to record the character which they developed as the message of heavenly origin was presented to them, and as very many who professed love for Jesus turned from the heavenly message with scorn. These are ones that professed love for Jesus, turned from the heavenly message with scorn, derision, and hatred. An angel with a parchment in his hand made a shameful record. All heaven was filled with indignation that Jesus should be thus slighted by his professed followers. I'm going to back up real quick to the previous chapter for a second, just to go through here. A glorious light is back in the Advent movement illustrated. A glorious light then rested upon the companies to enlighten all who would receive it. Some of those who were in darkness received the light and rejoiced. Others resisted the light from heaven, saying that it was sent to lead them astray. The light passed away from them. So there was light that came down. They resisted it. They were in darkness. The light comes down and they resist the light. And then they are going to be, as the other passage said, left in darkness. Others resisted the light from heaven, saying it was sent to lead them astray. The light passed away from them and they were left in darkness. So the same phrase, they're left in darkness. Those who had received the light from Jesus joyfully cherished the increase of precious light which was shed upon them. Their faces beamed with holy joy, while their gaze was directed upward to Jesus with intense interest, and their voices were heard in harmony with the voice of the angel. So now they're in harmony, understanding that they're in harmony with this and giving this message, fear God, give glory to God, for the hour of God's judgment has come. So they must have an understanding of this judgment that is coming. And what did we say last night? Let me see if I can ask the question right. Fear God. Why do we need to fear God? Anybody on that one? Say that again.
We're still in sin.
Because we're still in sin. And so if we're still in sin, Sarah said, because we're sinners. So if we're still in sin, then what does it mean to give glory?
Do no sin.
Do no sin, right? And can you do no sin if you don't know what sin is? But Sarah says, live a righteous life. What is a righteous life? Is it going to church on the Sabbath? Equality. So they get a message that says judgment is coming. Think about our own walk. And although we're only looking at Millerite history, think about 1989 when this message opens up and goes to through the Adventist church, not to the leadership, but through someone else to the Adventist church, that the Sunday law is coming, right? The Sunday law is coming. So get ready, prepare. But did we have any idea that how we were living our life was in sin? Did we realize we were sinners according to what the wrath is going to be poured out on? Did we understand? No, Sarah says no. Okay, so so as they raised this cry, I saw those who were in darkness thrusting them with side and with shoulder. Then many who cherished the sacred light broke the cords which confined them and stood out separated from those companies. As they were doing this, men belonging to the different companies and revered by them passed through, some with pleasing words and others with wrathful looks and threatening gestures, and fastened with cords which were weakening. These men were constantly saying, God is with us. We stand in the light. We have the truth. I inquired who these men were and was told that they were ministers and leading men who had rejected the light themselves and were unwilling that others should receive it. Okay, so now we'll go back down to another illustration. I saw the disappointment of the trusting ones. So if we're tracing where we're at, there's a disappointment of the trusting ones. Why are they disappointed? And it's in the passage.
The Lord didn't come at the expected time
Right.
when they thought.
So they had a time, a definite time, right? And the Lord didn't come at that expected time, so therefore they're disappointed. So so far we've seen that in both chapters, which is just a repeating of the previous 3 chapters, we're seeing the first angel. And it's calling the first angel a mighty angel with that's going to lighten the earth with its glory. So I saw the disappointed ones trusting the disappointment of the trusting ones as they did not see their Lord at the expected time. It had been God's purpose to conceal the future and to bring God's people to a point of decision. Without the preaching of definite time for the coming of Christ, the work designed of God would not have been accomplished. So you had to have or what she's saying here is that you had a message of definite time in order to accomplish the work that God had designed. Satan was leading very many to look far into the future for the great events connected with the judgment and the end of probation. We didn't go into that, but if anybody has any comments on that, Satan was leading very many to look far into the future for these events connected with the judgment. Does anybody know what she's talking about there? It's kind of a side note.
Is she speaking about the millennial prosperity, 1,000 years here on earth?
I think so. I don't remember quite where that's placed, but I think so. And if anybody has any definite yes or no on that, because I'm pretty sure that's what was going on. Satan was leading very many to look far into the future, the great events connected with the judgment and the end of probation. It was necessary that the people be brought to seek earnestly for a present preparation. So the next paragraph. As the time passed, which time are we talking about?
1844.
No, in the passage, it's talking about this expected time, right? And where else did it refer to it? Far into the future. Let's see. Definite time. Definite time. So you had this preaching of definite time for the coming of Christ. Who remembers what that definite time was that they were looking at and expecting the Lord to come?
That was 1844, October 22.
Not yet. We're not there yet. Anybody else?
Was that the April, the first?
Oh, yeah.
April, was it 19th, April 19th?
Let's see. Mary says, what would have been the present work they needed to focus on? You mean their present preparation to get ready for the judgment? The definite time. So maybe somebody can help me with this one as to where, as we read through a little bit more, help me with this one. So it is the definite time. When did William Miller first think that Jesus was coming? When did the Millerites first think that Jesus was coming? This you would think about the chart.
That's
We called it-
1843.
Right. Don't we call it the 1843 chart? Okay, and Luke said 1843. So there's this expected time. So as the time passed, so the time that passed is this definite time. So they're disappointed because this definite time that they thought they expected the Lord to come didn't come. They're disappointed. As the expected time, definite time passed, those who had not fully received the light of the angel united with those, so they didn't fully receive the light of the angel. Which angel?
The first.
The first. We're still talking about the first, right? So as the definite time passed, of the definite time that they expected the Lord to return passed, they were in this disappointed state. Those who had not fully received the light of the first angel united with those who had despised the message and turned upon the disappointed ones with ridicule. So you've got the ones that are disappointed, and now the others are turned upon them with ridicule. Angels marked the situation of Christ's professed followers. The passing of the definite time, so there's that phrase again, the passing of the definite time when they first expected their Lord to come, had tested and proved them. So they went through a disappointment and still had their eyes on Jesus. Is that fair to say? Let's see. Okay, so the passing of the definite time had tested and proved them, and very many were weighed in the balance and found wanting. They loudly claimed to be Christians, yet in almost every particular failed to follow Christ. Satan exulted at the state of his professed followers of Jesus. He had them in his snare. Satan had these people, the professed followers, in his snare. So what happened? You have a warning come. The earth is lightened with a mighty angel comes and to lighten the earth with its glory and to warn the earth, the inhabitants of the earth, of the wrath to come. They have an expected date, a definite time, and the Lord doesn't come, and they go through a disappointment. But the professed followers are watched here as well. And in almost every particular failed to follow Christ, Satan exulted at the state of the professed followers of Jesus. He had them, the professed followers, in his snare. He had led the majority to leave the straight path. So what would we consider be the straight path here? What's this straight path that they left? If you're on the straight path, just leave it. What is that straight path?
Boards, the lines.
And I don't, at this point, as we're reading, I mean, we're learning to lay things on a line. Or we have learned. But I'm looking at, if you're just back here in this time, reading without the information that we have, what would be that straight path? Just in looking at the chapter, you've got a message that comes down, and you've got people that follow it and people that don't. And Satan exults over the professed followers of Jesus and has them in the snare. He led them to leave the straight path. So just in the simple of this passage, what is the straight path?
The truth. The other way would be the crooked path.
Yeah. The message of the angel, Mary said. That's what I was looking for. But yes, the truth. So it'd be the message of the angel. Whatever the angel said, Satan lured them away from what the angel said. Okay. And they were attempting to climb up to heaven some other way. Angels saw the pure and holy mixed up with the sinners in Zion and with the world-loving hypocrites. I'm going to skip down to the next paragraph. Another mighty angel was commissioned. So you have a mighty angel that was commissioned that descends to lighten the earth and warn the world. And says, fear God, give glory to God, for the hour of God's judgment has come. We all determine that's the first angel. So now we see another mighty angel. It's commissioned to descend to earth. Jesus placed in his hand, the mighty angel, Jesus placed in the mighty angel's hand a writing. And as he came to the earth, this angel cried, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. So what angel are we looking at?
Second.
The second, right? Then I saw the disappointed ones again raise their eyes to heaven, looking with faith and hope for their Lord's appearing. But many seemed to remain in a stupid state, as if asleep. Yet I could see the trace of deep sorrow upon their countenances. The disappointed ones saw from the scriptures that they were in the tarrying time, and that they must patiently wait the fulfillment of the vision. The same evidence which led them to look for their Lord in 1843 led them to expect him in 1844. So going back to the question, I think it was when Robert said October 1844. So we weren't yet there. They were expecting, according to what we know on the chart, it's called the 1843 chart because that's when they first expected their Lord to come. So it led them to expect him in 1844, yet I saw that the majority did not possess that energy which marked their faith in 1843. Their disappointment had dampened their faith. So had a thought, and I want to process it here for a second with the with the mighty angel that's commissioned to descend to the earth. I do have, I think I still have it on the board on the other side. Just a thought that I had as we were going through this last night. Yeah. Okay, and I don't know if you can let me spotlight. Okay. So we can all see that? The board? So in those chapters, I just wanted to go back to this real quick. Don't necessarily need the church names, but just looking back at you had William Miller, and who's William Miller?
You mean the first angel?
He'd be the first angel, right? And then you had Ellen White, who is what? Represents
Third.
the third. So we didn't put anybody here. I think we weren't, I don't recall exactly who to put there. Samuel Snow, I think, right? Isn't it Samuel Snow?
Yeah, I was thinking, wasn't that who it was?
And I know it's just my mind. A lot of stuff is in my mind, but I can't always access it properly. So in that chapter, you have this first angel that gives a message. And what did we see? The first angel. What's the work of the first angel? What Elder Parmenter opened up. What is the work of the first angel?
Do you mean prepare?
Define,
Say that again.
defining.
Define, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the first angel and the third angel also, they both define doctrine. Right? So keeping that in mind, the first and second angel define doctrine. So now we have a second angel.
You said first and second. Did you mean first and third?
Yes, I meant first and third. Thank you. I can do that often. So now you have another mighty angel that was commissioned to descend to the earth. Jesus placed in his hand. And remember it said previously that this was, where did it say that? It had been God's purpose to conceal the future and to bring God's people to a point of decision. So they had to, so if you think about our journey has been a series of decisions, right? Is that safe to say? A series of decisions, steps along the way. I always think of them in my own experience as crossroads. But God lays out truth, and we know this from the repeating pattern that you have a message that arrives, then you have you have an increase of knowledge, then you have a formalization and a test. So you come to this place where you're tested. And this, I think, could take you back to the dialogue that transpired, if I understood the dialogue correctly in Sacramento. The dialogue that went back and forth. In one dispensation, you have a message that comes down. And then you have an increase of knowledge, then you have formalization. And does the message change? Or are you tested on that formalization of the message? Does the message change? Somebody,
No.
me if I have that incorrectly. No, okay. But what happens after the test?
More light comes and it's a new test, new message.
And if more light comes down, can it shine and show us that not necessarily what we had was wrong, but yet we had a step to get through? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it adds more clarity to the hindsight. Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions that was prominent in the USA camp meetings was what? What was that prominent question in the camp meetings? What was it? A lot of it was based around this one particular question.
The separation?
Not separation, I was going all the way back to Florida. What was the first question that he introduced into? Can the message change? And people were asking about the Sabbath. So I think we're all settled on the Sabbath issue. But when you come to the end of a dispensation, you're going to have another message come. And that light, I'm just thinking of that in terms of what it says here, that it had been God's purpose to conceal. Does God conceal things, or do we just learn things in steps? Do we learn? I think of it as in terms of something we've all heard said before, is you can't go from total darkness to the pure bright light. So we're given what we can handle. Yeah, as we can handle. And so they had what they could handle. So you get to that part that you can handle. And if you look at this if you look at this in looking and comparing to our history and what we have learned, you have an increase, you have a message that comes down, you have an increase on light, and then you have the formalization and a test. So would those that though they were disappointed, they knew it was light from God, right? So if you get this message that the Lord is coming in 1843, and the Lord doesn't come in 1843, but yet, oh, how do I say this? What happens to your faith? And so what does he say here? Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, okay. So the passing of the definite time had tested, right? So they were tested and proved them. What does it mean to prove them? There was a test. And what does it mean to prove them? They passed the test. Thank you, Susan. They passed the test. Does everybody follow that? Okay, so I don't know that,
Yes.
okay, I don't know how much we need to go into all that we did last night, other than we want to look at, let me skim through the notes. If there's anybody that's not in agreement or not understanding, because what we're looking at is, first of all, what angel was that we talked about? That was the first angel. We can see it more clearly because now we see the second angel being introduced. So where did we see that here? Another mighty angel. So we see the second angel being introduced. We know it's the second angel. Why? How do we know that this passage is talking about the second angel? And she's being,
Babylon. The Babylon is fallen.
right. And she's being very specific, because in the previous, I think it was I don't think it was noted in at another illustration, but in the Advent Movement Illustrated, it's noted that she's quoting the first angel's message. And then and she's also stating that it's a warning, right? And a warning of the wrath to come. So, but she also quotes the first angel's message. So this one, another mighty angel comes and she's quoting, so that there can be no mistaking the order that she's taking as she walks us through this. So back to the question then, what we worked on last night, if one passes the test, I think so, that their faith is strengthened. I think so, if you pass the test. Because you do learn to trust along the way. And I think about that. This, for me personally, you know, when you look at what we have learned in these past few years, and look at where we were like pre-2019, would we ever, well, the right way to say this, would we have thought that that being gay was not a sin? Would we have thought that? or when it came to equality? Were we looking at any of that? So when we look at it, if you think about it as the phrase out on a limb, right? Out on a limb. You think about yourself going to try and talk to Seventh-day Adventists and trying to share what we know. This message has taken us out on a limb and tested our faith, right? But if we followed step by step, we are able to understand and accept it, and our faith is made stronger and stronger, so that what we see going forward, we will have the faith to stand, if that made sense. So, but our faith is like, or the message has taken us out on a limb when you compare it anyways to Adventism or even Protestantism as to what they would accept. So I think we are all in the same place, but I'm not sure, because there's some that are here that were not here before, that were not here last night. So if we're looking in Revelation 18, what history is Revelation 18? Is it the Millerite history? Is
No.
Revelation, sorry, say that again?
Revelation 8, our history.
Is our history. Is there anybody that through these passages wants to, that still sees Revelation 18 in the Millerite history? Because that's what we want to walk through, what we walked through last night. And I want to add hopefully a few points with that. So are we all in agreement that Revelation 18 is not Millerite history?
Yes.
Yes.
Not Millerite history. Did a few more, some of those that weren't.
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. So if Revelation 18 is not our history, or Revelation 18 is not Millerite history, for those that were not here last night, how do we prove from the Bible, not Spirit of Prophecy, but how do we prove from the Bible that Revelation 18 is not Millerite history? And this is for those that were not here last night. Anybody?
Are you opening for us that were here last night? Okay. Because,
we're jumping at the bit.
Because 18:3 says, "For all nations have drunken, all nations."
So explain that.
So back in Millerite history, not all nations have drunken the wine of Babylon. And this is following Revelation 17 about the harlot, the woman, the harlot there. I think it's verse 5, 17:5.
So you're looking at, you went to what chapter? What chapter did you go to?
I started with
Into two.
18:3, and then I went to Revelation 17:5.
So 18:3, if somebody wants to read verse 3, that's one Gloria mentioned, or Gloria can read it if she wants. Revelation 18:3.
No, someone else can read it, please.
Okay. Somebody want to read Revelation 18:3?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
For all nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies.
Okay. So what are those first three words? I think it's the first three words.
For all nations.
For all nations. So Revelation 18 is speaking of all nations. And then Gloria mentioned Revelation 17. And so we'll walk through that if I can remember how to do that. Let me go right here. Okay, so what we went through last night, Revelation 17, just to review what we've covered so far. looking at the Millerite history, these 5 chapters cover the Millerite, there are others. That when you, at least when you get up to 1844, and I think that's where he's marking, Millerite history to 1844. So you get to, these 5 chapters, William Miller, the first angel's message, second angel's message, Advent Movement Illustrated is just repeating these 3, and another illustration is just giving us another illustration of the same thing. And this is where we just read from, Advent Movement Illustrated, and then another illustration. We asked what angel was this that we were first reading. And we saw that angel gives a warning message. It's also considered called a mighty angel, and also says that angel is going to lighten the earth with its glory. It's commissioned by Jesus to go to the earth. And so gives a warning message, and we saw in the passages, looking at both chapters, we saw that it warns the inhabitants of the earth that the wrath is coming. What is wrath? What does it mean by wrath? What is wrath?
Judgment.
Judgment. So wrath is the coming judgment, the coming of the judgment that is that they're being warned about. And then the first, this passage here actually quoted the first angel's message, correct? So we saw that in both chapters, we're looking at the first angel. And then when we went down to 247, it was 247, I listened to that passage again last night as I was finishing the notes, the part that I didn't grab. It was actually Elder Parmenter that said 274. So I wrote 274, but it is 247, paragraph 1, where it then identifies the second. So when you identify the second, here you've got these 2 chapters that are both repeating this history, and they're both starting out with the first angel that without careful reading, we're going to see this mighty angel that lightens the earth with his glory. Where's our head going to go?
Revelation 18.
Revelation 18. Naturally, we're going to flow to Revelation 18. But as we carefully read through it, we see that it's a warning message, and then it's going to warn of the coming wrath. It's going to lighten the earth with its glory, and it's going to have and it comes with a warning of the wrath to come. So what confirms it then is when you go back into another illustration. We didn't go further into this chapter, but we went into another illustration, and 247 gives a cry that Babylon is fallen, which confirms that this angel that we were looking at in these passages is the first angel. Does everybody follow that? Okay, that's just a review of what we've already done. We're all in agreement that was the first angel. I see a yes.
Yes.
And then it's confirmed that this mighty angel that descends from earth is the first angel, not Revelation 18. So what we want to look at now is which history is it? And we've just looked at Revelation 18 that Gloria pointed out. In Revelation 18, paragraph verse 3, it says, and then Robert read it, it's all nations. It's referring to all nations. And Millerite history, I think somebody said it, Millerite history does not include all nations. So how do we know that? How do we know that Millerite history is not all nations? And where did Gloria take us to? Anyway, those that were here last night too. Where did Gloria take us to?
Revelation 17.
Revelation 17. And what were we looking at in Revelation 17?
The
Was
sixth
it the
head.
crowns?
Gloria and then Troy.
The sixth head.
The 6th head,
United States, yes.
United States. And Troy, I think you said the crowns. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna get to the crowns, hopefully. The best that I understand it, at least to date, we'll get to the crowns. And so we looked briefly at Revelation 12, 13, and then 17. And that's what I believe Troy's bringing up when it comes to the crowns. Because in Revelation 12, you have 7 7 heads, 10 horns, and then 7 crowns. Is that correct? I better get my Bible to have it, so we have it look perfect. Revelation 12. And who remembers what verse it was? Red dragon having 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. Revelation 13, verse 1. You have a beast that rises up out of the sea, has 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. So you have 7 heads, 10 horns, and on this one there's 10 crowns on the heads of the horns, or on the horns. Okay, Revelation 17. And I don't know if I remember the verse. 3, I think it's 3. Yeah, verse 3. No, yeah, 7 heads and 10 horns, but there's crowns missing. Okay, so we want to look at that, the differences between the two. So between the 3, Revelation 12, you have 7 heads, and it's, who is that beast defined as in 12, chapter 12? Am I saying that right? The beast? Who's the beast defined as?
You mean the dragon?
Yes. A great red dragon. And eventually it tells you who that dragon is. Okay. And okay, so we've got 3 different passages that are giving similar, using the same symbols, but they vary in what they say. So Revelation 17, we looked at, and what is our knowledge of the 7 heads? What do we understand those 7 heads to be?
The kingdoms of Bible prophecy,
The
starting
kingdoms
with
of Bible
Babylon.
prophecy, which are Babylon, Medo Persia, Greece, Rome. And I know this is the one that some struggle with. And we went through that last night, but we haven't proved it. And if anybody can remember to direct anybody that has trouble with it, part of our Laodicean Adventism thinking is that this 5th head is what?
Catholic Church,
Is the Catholic Church. But what is it?
European kings.
The European kings. And if anybody knows and Troy said Europe, so if anybody knows, if anybody's doesn't understand that, and if anybody has a video to direct them to, please do, so that we don't take the time here to go through that.
You know, Elaine, just to add, Elder Parmender, one of those School of the Prophet 2018, talks about how Catholicism is not really a church. It's just a paganism garbed in Christianity. And he talked about those Dagon hats, you know, those paganistic
Yeah,
Philistine, you know, fish hat. Yeah, so
that's in one of the studies that'll be coming up, and we'll go through that in more detail.
yes.
Yeah, that is, and it's one, I did send you the notes, and it's in one of those. So it's got to be the one you're talking about. It's got to be the same one, I think. Well, it might be. We probably talked about it in other places. Okay, so you have this in Revelation 17. You have the 7 kingdoms of Bible prophecy, and let's go through those passages again, because I know I had my own self confused, and we want to make sure that we go through them well, because it says it in different ways that we want to look at. Verse 8 is one of them. Let me see. I think verse 8 is one of them. Need light, hang on a second. Okay, so 7 is talking about the beast that carrieth her with had 7 heads and 10 horns. Verse 8, the beast that thou sawest was and is not and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. So you have a beast that was. What does it mean to be? This is gonna do it both ways, actually. Now that's probably why I had myself confused last night. I'll do it both ways. So what does it mean, the beast that was? What state is that beast?
Dead.
Elaine, what? Are
No,
you reading?
what is
and
the
Re-
beast that was?
You're reading from Revelation what?
17:8. And I just want to touch on, Mary wants to explain Revelation 12 beast with 7 heads, 10 horns, and no crowns. No, the Revelation 12 does have crowns. Revelation 12 does have crowns. Let me go back there. Having 7 heads and 10 horns and 7 crowns upon his heads. So 12 has crowns on those 7 heads. And 13, what did we say, 13? 10 crowns, let's see. 13 has 7 heads, 10 horns, and the 10 horns have crowns. And then 17. And I lost my place again. Trying to keep all these chapters straight, sorry. That's the verse 3. Having 7 heads and 10 horns, but there's no crowns listed in chapter 17. There's no crowns listed. So I want to restate the question because Sarah said dead. So, and you're correct based on which passage we were, but in this particular passage, you have a beast that was, and then you have a beast that is not. The beast that you saw, John, you saw, and where is John? Where's John taken? When he sees this, where is John taken when he sees this? To the wilderness, correct, to the wilderness. And the wilderness is when?
Twelve
1260. There's another word that goes along with 1260. What does 1260 mean? It's the 1260. What else would we call that?
Is
Dark
the,
Ages.
Dark Ages?
I was
Somebody,
gonna say it's the half of the 2520.
that's
so-
the 2520. What else? Captivity. Who said that? Captivity. Mary said captivity. Okay, so it's captivity. So God's people are in captivity here. Okay. So verse 8, there's a beast that was and is not and shall ascend. So we read it last night from, what verse did we read last night? Was it Logina? And I need to find.
Is that Revelation 17:8?
Not 8, that's the one I'm in right now.
17:10.
The one that said they're fallen.
Yeah, 17:10,
So,
right, Susan?
so if I'm following that correctly, then 8 is saying the beast that was, let's see, the beast that thou sawest was and is not and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. So that beast that was, it means that beast was, doesn't that mean that beast that was alive? And then the beast is dead. And then the beast will ascend out of the bottomless pit. If I'm reading that correctly, and help me because I might be confused on this one. So verse 10, and there are 7 kings. So these, oh, okay, that's where I'm mixed up. Because verse 8 is talking about the beast. Okay, there's a difference here, and that's where we want to get to down here. So verse 8 is talking about the beast, and what we're talking about is the 7 heads. Does that make sense?
Yes,
That, okay, so we have that distinction. Verse 8 is talking about the beast, and verse 10 is talking about the 7 heads. So in verse 8, the beast that was would mean that that beast was alive, right? And then it's not, so the beast is dead, and then shall ascend, it'll be alive again. Verse 10 is the 7 heads, which is what we want to focus on, is the 7 heads. and hopefully get down to answer that question. So verse 10, and there are 7 kings. We have our 7 here. And then we have that 5 are fallen. And that's where I believe Sarah, or a couple others probably answered that they're dead, that the 5 are fallen, they're dead. And that one is, we see the one is, which means it's alive. And then the other is yet to come. And it'll be a short space. So you have the beast that, I'm sorry, the heads, 5 are fallen here. And when the 5 are fallen, it brings us to this date. This is, John is actually showing, if anybody wants to read verse 1, somebody read verse 1 in chapter 17.
I can.
Okay,
Chapter 17, verse 1. And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters.
okay. So you've got judgment. We're gonna just at least key in on judgment. So this is the judgment of the whore, right? And we'll go into later the sitting on waters, not in this study, but you've got judgment here of the whore. And so the whore is judged when? When is the whore judged? In this story. Who is the whore?
The papacy,
The papacy. When is the papacy judged?
1798.
1798. Okay. And she sits on many waters. Like I said, we'll look at that at another time. So you've got the papacy being judged here. These 5 kings are fallen. And you have one that is, which is alive. And we see, and what are we actually trying to prove? What does Revelation 18:3 say? We're trying to find out, we're trying to prove from the Bible that Revelation 18 is what?
All nation.
All nations. Revelation 18 is all nations, so it is not Millerite history, right? So when does Millerite history take place?
When the United States rises.
When the United States rises. So you've got the
1798.
1798. So you have the judgment of the whore. And remember, this is connected to, you've got the 7 heads, but it's also connected to the beast. And that's what we want to understand, the difference between the kingdoms, the 7 kingdoms, and the beast. So you've got these 7 kingdoms, and the whore is judged here at 1798. Now you have the United States, and we didn't bring this into it. I don't think, maybe we did last night, but when the one is alive, of the kings, one of these 7 kings is alive, 5 are dead. What is it that is different here in the United States that helped the people? Lack of a better way to say that.
The Constitution.
The Constitution. So 538 is not 1798 yet is. I think during the 1260, you have the beast. Yes, yes. I had to think about that, Mary, or that was Susan. I had to think about that. So you have the beast here during the 538 to 1260, the 1260 history that is not. I know how was. That's probably if you weren't here with us last night. I do have that confusing from the other chapter because it's talking about the beast. So we'll get rid of that. That might have been what was confusing. So you have this one that after the 5 are fallen, and then you have the one that's alive. So as Victoria said, you have the Constitution. And what does the Constitution represent?
Liberty, well, freedom. Oh, are you talking about republicanism and or are you just talking about freedom and equality? Or oh yeah, the law. That's
What was the main
simple.
purpose?
Yeah. Huh?
What was the main purpose of the Constitution? As we know it, and I don't know if it was the main purpose, but what was it? They came out of
To declare freedom from Europe. I mean, well, no, that was the Declaration of Independence, but
Well, what did they, there was something in particular that they did.
Separate church and state powers.
yes.
Separation of church and state, right? Okay, so that helps us to understand a bit of when it comes to the beast. Because you have the 7 heads, but you also have this beast. And the 7 heads have 5 that are fallen. And one that mean they're dead and one that's alive. And the kingdom, 7 heads, sorry, 5 have fallen, 7 kings have fallen, and this kingdom is alive, and this other one is going to come, which is all nations. So in Millerite history, how many nations does the Millerite history include?
Just one, the United States.
Just one, right? Just one.
Yeah.
Let's look at Sarah's question. So if Papal Rome is not a kingdom, correct, it's not a kingdom, it's not the kingdom. What kingdom was? And let's, is that verse 8 again? Because I have to keep the 2 straight in my head. Verse 8, the beast that thou sawest was and is not. And I think that's where I had both on there and it was confusing. So you have a beast and then you have a kingdom. So verse 8 is talking about the beast. Verse 10 is talking about the kings, if that helps. But so Papal Rome, no, is not a kingdom. It was the kings of Europe. Because who was the boss of the kings of Europe?
The papacy.
Right? Wasn't it the woman
Yeah.
controlling
Yeah.
the state, right? Okay. So you had this woman, and I think it was Gloria brought up, and we won't go there yet. Somebody brought up paganism. We won't go there yet. That's for another study. To just try to stick with this, that we understand and see that these 5 that are fallen, of these 7 kings, you have 5 that are fallen, meaning they're dead. You have 1 that's alive. So when the Millerite history takes place, it's this message is only inclusive of the United States. Revelation 18 tells you, Revelation 18:3 tells you it's all nations. So you have 1 nation here, and you have all nations in this history. Does that make sense? From the Bible.
Yes, that makes sense. I have a question.
Okay.
But this is kind of like a little beyond, but it's the same subject. So when it says the 8th is of the 7th, so I know we don't have that 8th kingdom there after the 7. I was just wondering, oh no, I'm forgetting my question. Okay, so because we know that the UN will be leading for that short amount of time, why, and we know that the 8th is basically the same as the 7th, so why I'm wondering why God wanted to specify that there's an 8th kingdom if that one is like the same as the 7th. And we know that the UN is, with the understanding that the UN is only going to be leading for that short amount of time or the hour. Does my question make sense?
Yeah, I think so, but I don't know if I have the full answer to it, but I have a couple of thoughts that we can go on it. So Sarah says, is the woman going to control the 7th kingdom? And that's kind of where I wanted to sort of look at the beast too, but the 8th is of the 7th, so I don't want to go into the 8th.
I think we're
at least
with Victoria's question.
huh?
Wait, I think with Victoria's question, there must be such a difference that so God can show us that separation. There's going to be such a difference
Yeah,
in that kingdom.
well, I was thinking, I know there has to be a difference, but I'm just wondering, like, what is that difference? I'm thinking because we see that the church is over, I'm wondering, my thought, I guess, is that like where the church is basically, like, I don't know how I want to put it, where, I don't know. Okay, I'll just say my thought. I'm wondering if that's just where the papacy has full control. I don't know how I want to put it because I don't know if that's right. But it's just my thought. So I don't know if I want to say it because I don't think, but that is, yeah, I'm not gonna say it. I'm going back and forth. So I just want to know, what is that difference?
Um,
I just want to mention, I think what we learned from the past is that Babylon, that first kingdom is the literal Babylon, but I think when it comes to eighth kingdom, it's the mystery or the spiritual Babylon, right? It's a parabolic when it brings down to our time.
well, I appreciate the questions. I'm not myself able at this point to go there, if that's okay. And I do appreciate the questions. It'd be questions for us all to look for and go forward with. What I do, if it still stands, and I'm pretty sure it does, that eighth being of the seven, what does eighth represent? What does the number 8 represent?
Yeah, the first, well, it's, oh, you mean it's going to be,
Eighth is a resurrection, the
Correct.
number resurrection.
Yeah, I
So
understand it.
yeah.
I understand it. So not looking at the 8th right now as part of this particular study, but it's something for us to look into going forward. But we're just gonna stick to what we're looking at now, just to make sure we understand how we prove from the Bible that, Revelation 18 is not part of Millerite history. And from the Bible, we see Revelation 18:3 that says all nations, and that takes place, we know, in the 7th kingdom. And then we see Millerite history takes place here under the 6th kingdom, and it's only local to the United States. So what we want to hopefully try to look at real quick, and this will be brief and then finish up, and then I hopefully and then my next time I teach, we'll be able to break down the rest of the studies that I've been working on to go through this a little bit more thoroughly. So we're just gonna kind of touch on it, and then it'll come out more detailed later, if that makes sense. So you have these kings, and why do some have crowns? 10 horns have crowns in 13, and the 7 heads have crowns in 12, and you don't see that. And then you have verse 8 in Revelation 17, where you have the beast that was and is not. So is a beast a kingdom? We'll
yes, yes. Mhm.
We're gonna definitely go a little bit over because I want to read the Great Controversy quote, and then I want to finish up with the things that I picked up that were good points from the end of the study that we didn't go through last night. So some say yes, some are saying yes, that the beast is a kingdom. So let me think of how to say this. So you have 7 heads, which we know are kingdoms. Babylon, Medo, Persia, Greece, Rome. What makes, you have the Assyrians back here, right? You have Egypt. What makes a kingdom a beast? Because a kingdom can be a beast, but what makes it a beast?
Are you looking for laws?
Looking for what?
Laws?
I can't quite make out the word you said, sir.
I'm wondering if you're looking for laws. They make laws.
No, not law.
You may trample upon God's law.
Trample on God's law, we're maybe getting somewhere.
I think,
We're getting somewhere. So what makes
Yeah.
a beast? What makes a kingdom a beast? Because we saw that a head is a kingdom. We also saw that the kingdom is a mountain. So the head, kingdom, mountain, they're all the same. But what makes, because we looked at this in verse 10 and it talks about the five are fallen, but verse 8 talks about the beast and says the beast that was and is not and yet is or is to come, however it says it. So there's something different about the seven heads, these seven kings, and a beast. Something
Is it
different
church
about
and
a beast.
state? Is it a church and state relationship that makes it different?
Not quite would I say that.
Okay.
Or do you want to change God's law?
Change God's law? No.
When they trample other nations.
I want to say power, but
Power. In this history here, for instance, this was a captivity. Captivity is who is captivity judgment on?
God's people.
God's people. God's people. So what's the difference between this history and this history? What are the heads doing in this history different than they did in this history?
Persecution.
Persecution, right?
Yes.
So a king or kingdom can only be a beast when they're doing what?
holding God's people captive?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry. It's like,
I mean, it's part of it. It's just, it's who is the beast fighting against?
Well,
Ultimately, think the great controversy. Who is fighting?
People.
You have a kingdom
Sure.
that is fighting. Francisco said God's people,
Yeah.
or could we just say God?
Yeah, I said,
So some said law. I know you said law. There was a few of you that said law.
well, I said the church, God's church. Yeah.
So literally it's this beast, because if you go back to Revelation 12 and you have, it identifies that this great red dragon is who?
Satan.
Satan.
Satan. And who is Satan fighting? God or God's people?
God.
So God.
mhm.
So while you have other kingdoms in the world, these kingdoms specifically are listed out as kingdoms of Bible prophecy. And then you have in Revelation 17:8, it talks about a beast that was, is not, and is yet to come. I don't remember how it says it. So you have a kingdom. The kingdom is alive, right? You have the kingdom is alive, but what's missing?
Persecution of God's people.
Right. They have freedom. They have what? We talked about it, the Constitution, right? They have the Constitution. So the beast that will come again, and think about this, the Revelation 17 also says that there's a woman that rides the beast, right? Right? And I think we went through, no, we'll go through for a future study. We'll lay out who John is talking about in those first few verses of Revelation 17. Those seven heads, who are they? We're identifying them right now as these seven kingdoms of Bible prophecy. And you have a woman that rides the beast. So you have a beast that involves fighting against God. You have come down here and you have a beast that was, a beast that is not, and a beast that is yet to come. Think of where my thoughts were going so I can get back there. So a woman, goes into what I think it was Gloria that brought it up. I might have it wrong. I think it was Gloria. So you have a woman that is riding the beast. So and that woman is who in this history?
The
Catholic Church.
Oh.
Yeah.
Catholic Church,
Papacy, yeah.
right? Catholic Church. So we won't go back into this history here, but we will ask just briefly, was the papacy back here?
No,
Okay, so we want to keep that in mind as we go forward with the next studies. So, is everybody okay with that understanding that there's a difference between the kingdoms and the beast? A beast is a kingdom, but it's got something that the kingdoms don't have, that just any old kingdom doesn't have. A kingdom of Egypt, what have you, what makes it a beast is that they fight against God. The kingdom fights against God. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
so Elaine, you mentioned the first beast. So is that the beast that comes out from the waters? Is that the European from Europe versus the second beast, which comes out from the earth?
We'll go through that later, not tonight.
Okay, all right.
But I'm still working on understanding a lot of it too, but I have like 2 of those studies in my 3 or 4 of those studies in my head, and I want to go through it more systematically if that's for myself and probably for all of us, but definitely for myself. So at least what we do understand now is that Millerite history is not Revelation 18, because Revelation 18 is all nations. And we see that in the 6th head, it's only the United States. The Millerite history is in this history here. So keep that in mind with what we're watching the counterfeit do, what we're watching this nation do. We know that we're right up here, hard on this line of the United States and Adventism shipwreck. The Constitution, you're looking at 1798, you're going to have the ship of Alexandria, right? So you have the ship of Alexandria that is sailing through this history. And what was Alexandria? What did Alexandria mean?
People.
Protector.
of the people.
Yeah, defender of the people.
Right. So there's been this period of time where humanity has had this defender of the people. But this defender of the people is tearing apart the Constitution. And you have the religious side of it, lying and deceiving people. And so think about this, that Revelation 13, because it's this head, or it's referred to as the second beast, right? The second beast. So you have the first beast of Revelation 13 and you have the second beast. So something changes that this one becomes a beast. And it brings, if I understand it correctly, it brings the fall here at the shipwreck at Sunday Law. Then you have, what did we identified this last night as the UN, the United Nations. So if a woman rides the beast, and the beast is, or the, how do I say this? You have church and state that are going to come together, and you're going to have a woman controlling the government, correct?
Correct.
Right.
So where my thoughts are at, and my question, if this is the UN, who is the beast, who is the woman going to be riding, that is going to fight against God?
The UN, with the United States being the premier king.
Yeah, those are things, I was reading Mary's comment, because I mean, those are things that are stirring in my mind now, trying to figure this out. How does the UN, with its beautiful Declaration of Human Rights, end up persecuting the people it purports to protect? Mind-boggling. It does, and what we've been looking at, though, is when it comes to the rape, there's a problem. So I think that I know that for myself, I need to better understand the UN and also be looking at the counterfeit and all these other things we need to look at and understand. But understand the counterfeit, because if the woman is going to ride the government and control the strings, or if you're on a horse, you have the reins, you're holding the reins and you're directing that beast, just like she directed those 10 kings back here, she's going to direct those 10 kings here. What is that? And what I have picked up so far is whatever the United States does, it's driving them to this point. And then if we think about the counterfeit is a counterfeit equality. No, you're looking at equality falling apart here, and the counterfeit is a counterfeit equality. Does that mean that, and it's going to control the UN? And we won't go any further past this, but don't those 10 kings find out that they've been lied to or deceived?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then what do they do to the whore?
They kill her.
They kill her. They burn her with fire. Isn't that what it says? They burn her with fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to just touch on what, and I'll give you the passage that we won't read now because of time. But if anybody wants to read it, to go back and refer to it, Great Controversy 389, paragraph 2, is where Ellen White will tell us that Revelation 14 is Millerite history, and then she references, not yet can we say that she has not yet made all nations, and in her writing she italicizes all nations, and in the King James of Revelation 18, all nations is not italicized. So that's for if you want to read that passage. We went through it last night. So this was just something he closed off with, that I did not have this in the notes last night. And I'll just kind of read through it. Let's see. And he was looking back at the Advent movement illustrated, how we talk about darkness, because we brought up the darkness. We saw the darkness in that passage again. Yeah, that's what it seems like, Troy, that they're influenced by the papacy. But I don't know how that fits. I think that's something we have to look at, how it all, time and study will help us to better understand it, understand how they work. So how it all works. So then looking at darkness, because if you remember, we saw that in that passage, the darkness and some of this stuff about the transition and that beast coming alive. And I have not gone through all those classes, but this is all old material. This is 2018. So again, I think Christine put those links in the chat earlier for these classes. There's a lot of them. There's like probably 90 of them, 90, close over 90. Okay, so we often talk about darkness being the darkness is the period, you got that period of darkness that you come up to the time of the end. And that darkness being called the mystery of iniquity. So being the darkness is the period that comes before the time of the end, right? So then he's talking about how we need to proof text carefully. It says these people were bound together, and he's talking about the Advent movement illustrated. They're bound together, and you go back to those passages. These are just for thoughts for anybody to read. Let me real quick so that you have it, because I was asked last night and I forgot. Hang on one second. I'm gonna put it in here so you can have my notes are not, I apologize, they're not complete transcripts. They're more as I put them together to better help me to walk it through as a class rather than, I mean, weeding out a lot of their discussion and stuff. So let me find them and I'll put them in there, but then you'll have this here to put in there to go through yourself and then go back and reference. Oh, one of it won't take, okay. I'll have to send the other one, let's see.
Are these what the passages, or your notes what the passages, or just your notes?
These are I transcribed, but I edited it into notes for me. But it'll have what I'm about to read.
Oh, okay.
I think that'll be helpful, but I had one that wouldn't go through, so give me just 1 second. I think it's the Mighty Angel one. Yeah. I had it open and it wouldn't send it through because I had it open. Okay. So because I know I said it last night about these people in darkness, but there's something he's going to say about here about reading carefully about where you place the darkness that's in that passage. If you remember us reading it, if not, refer back to it, is in the Advent Movement Illustrated, those first couple of chapters. So it says that people were bound together. And so people automatically say, oh, it's the binding off and it must be after 1844. And then he says, we realized it's actually before the time of the end. And that's in the notes that I just sent you. It's the one that's titled The Second Angel is the one we're looking at right now. The second angel. Many were in total darkness. Their eyes were directed downward and there was no connection between them and Jesus. But scattered between these people, there are certain individuals whose faces looked light and they're looking to heaven. Oh, hopefully this is found it to be encouraging. I think Susan read this or watched this, so I think she knows, Susan Field knows this passage. It was given at the end of this particular study. Okay, so their faces look light and they're looking to heaven. Beams of light from Jesus rested upon them. And all of this, Elder Parmenter says, is before the time of the end. What you're going to see is the people who are going to be used in this history, the history after the time of the end, okay? The people that are going to be used in the history after the time of the end, they are already identifiable in the history before the time of the end, and that they didn't come out of nowhere. So in this School of Prophets class, he was going through multiple books, but he's highlighting here spiritual gifts, story of redemption, spirit of prophecy. If everybody knows what spirit of prophecy means, those it was the 4 versions of before you had the conflict of the ages. And then you have great controversy. And all these books teach us the same story in different ways. They're all the same story, but taught in different ways. Often we only use one of them to develop our line of thinking. In doing so, we can end up with incomplete or even wrong answers. Because we argue that William Miller came from nowhere, or we came from nowhere, just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And people say, I don't know why God chose me. I know I've said that. And his response was to stop looking in the mirror. If we read carefully, if we read this carefully, it shows us the people here have already been selected, the people in after the time of the end history. In this case, it would be us. He's talking about Millerite history. The people have been selected in this, shows us that the people have already been selected in this history. So in the history after the time of the end, those people had already been selected. The reason you're here in this movement is not because you made some decision with this message when this message came to you. You already had light before. Subtleties like that we'll find particularly in these early works that you can't find in the later work. So what he says is that we should read widely. Read parallel passages, read parallel books, so that we can gather, just like you read the 4 Gospels, you read all 4 and lay them over each other, and you, in the details, grow. So the same thing with her writings. In a time of darkness, not everyone is in darkness. God still has their chosen individuals, And they are the ones that God is going to use in this history. We have to be careful about what we think of about ourselves. Many talk about how unworthy they are, and we should ask ourselves, if I'm so bad, what is that telling us about God, that they choose worthless people to do an important job? No one would do that. And so then he just did a quick summary that we already covered. So I just found that hopeful, positive, if that was helpful.
Which document was that quote in?
It's in the one, it's the very end of the one that says the second angel.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second angel. And it was from the particular study that we did. I just didn't have that part of it transcribed last night. So that was it. I don't know if anybody were kind of overtime, but hopefully we all either already understood that or understand it better now, because I know we need to understand is one last thing. I know what we need to understand is this history, because we're here at this agitation. And while some of the articles that are coming out and the things that Donald Trump is saying is wild and out of hand, and that's leading, whatever's happening here has been happening all the way through, what is culminating in the shipwreck. And if we look at this, we see that this beast that was being a beast that is a government or a kingdom that is actually fighting against God. And we see that a woman rides this beast, and here there's no fighting against God. Here you have the Constitution, the ship of Alexandria, the defender of the people, and that protection is going to be gone, and you're going to have a woman again riding a beast. And the government, if you follow the thing that these governments are, that government is this government here, worldwide, right?
Yes, that's right.
So to me, logically, that's where we're headed, but I don't know if if we have everything right. But we want to understand the counterfeit and perhaps, and also look back at what did the counterfeit do to looking at history. And I think he points out too that the Catholic Church was always alive, never dead, just has not had success riding the government of the United States, if that makes sense. So people ask, well, what about Protestantism? And that maybe will come up later, but it's not Protestantism that is doing this. It's the Catholic Church is going to ride the beast. And the beast has to be this kingdom or a government and that government in the seventh kingdom is the UN. It's a worldwide kingdom as opposed to one nation. So that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you, Elaine. This was, yeah, it's a great study. And yeah, so, we need to keep our eyes on multi facets. Because one of the things that Elder Parminder also speaks about is he brings up King Ahab and Jezebel and the prophets of Baal, Herodias, Herod, and Salome, the three. And if you want to see what the woman is doing, keep the eye on the man, because the woman is hiding.
Yes, and that's the place to eventually go to is Jezebel and Herod, or Ahab and Herod, Jezebel, and I have them mixed up. Herod and Jezebel, and then Ahab and Jezebel, and Herod and Herodias. Is it Herodias? And then her daughter, the daughter.
Yes.
Herodias.
Right?
Yes.
So those studies will add another layer if anybody wants to dig into those. Maybe somebody take Ahab and Jezebel and somebody else take Herod and Herodias, because those are going to add another layer on here to understand. So thank you for bringing that up, because that is going forward where it kind of heads to look at. But I don't know how much detail it goes into, because I've only gone into so many of the classes. So Victoria, would you like to close us in prayer?
Sure. Dear God in heaven, thank you so much for this time we've had on the Sabbath together. We're so thankful for the ways and how you lead us, and the time to be able to go back and review and to gain a better understanding of the light that's been shared. We just appreciate all the light that has been given. We just pray to continue to grow in truth. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.